Another reason why somebody doesn't exercise or do anything is because they don't just chunk it too big, they chunk it in too many details. I'll give you a perfect example. So I asked somebody one time, I said, okay, how important is exercise? Oh, exercise is extremely important. Really? Okay, good. And tell me, why don't you exercise regularly? Well, I just don't have time. Okay, everybody gives that answer. That sounds wonderful. So tell me though, don't tell me about how much time you don't have. Tell me this. When you think about exercising, what do you think about? Which is a way of saying, what do you focus on? And so this woman says to me, well, my gosh, what do you mean what do I think about? Well, let's say I said to you, you got to start exercising and I'm going to put a gun to the head of your children and I will do very horrible things and hurt them badly if you don't exercise. Could you do it? Oh yeah, I could do it. Remember this. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation. I'll say that again. Change is never a matter of ability. It's always a matter of motivation or drive, having strong enough reasons. If you got a strong enough reason, you could figure out the time, couldn't you? You got to understand there's two choices. There's fear and there's faith. And as simplistic as that sounds, I ask people, what's the difference? And they get confused. And I said, it's really simple. They're both made up. No one knows for sure what the future looks like. And when I say the 7 or 8 years, it's not all just tough economic times. There's going to be a confrontation with China. Maybe there'll be a cyber war. Maybe someone will turn off your electricity. There's zero question we're on target for that. If anybody wants to get a better understanding, they can read some of Ray Dalio's work on the changing world order and understanding what's happened over 1,000 years of history. But the point of the matter is it's not all dark. That's number one. But number two is, what's the difference between fear and faith? They're both imagination. But fear is imagination undirected. It's like weeds, it just grows automatically. Faith is you decide to be certain, you take action, you follow through. There's no guarantee of anything. There's no guarantee. I mean, people run around with a mask and they walk outside and get hit by a truck. People ask me all the time, what does it take to be happy? And I always tell them it's really simple. One word, progress. Progress equals happiness. If you keep growing, you're going to feel alive. And if you keep growing, you're going to have more to give. And when you're growing and giving is when life is magnificent. It doesn't matter how many statues, Oscars they give you, or Emmys, or how much money you have in the bank. We've all seen people have all those things, and I get the phone call because they're depressed, or somebody commits suicide in that area. So it's really an inner game. And I think that's what's missing for us today. People, the first question people go to is how? And that's the wrong question. How is absolutely the wrong question to start with, because if you've never done it before, what that produces is uncertainty. If you have uncertainty, then you don't execute at the same level. It's like people saying knowledge is power. We all know that's bullshit, right? Execution is power. Knowledge is potential power. Execution beats knowledge every day of the week. So my bias is towards action. Even if it's the wrong action, you're gonna learn quicker than if you do nothing. But the challenge is people are asking how, and that produces uncertainty. What you gotta ask is what and why. If you know what needs to be done and why it needs to be done, if it's strong enough, then there's a level of certainty that will show up in your nervous system, and you'll be able to inspire it in other people as well, because you can't fake it. Everybody can feel it. Everybody's focusing on the outside world, and how there's a lot of things in the outside world you'll never be able to control. You can influence, but you can't control it. This, your mind, your emotions, your body, you have 100% control over what you do with these things, and that's where the game is won. You win the inner game, then you win the outer game. But a lot of people spent their life trying to win the outer game, they won, and they're miserable. So to me, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And so many people are focused on success still, which to me is like, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's like success is getting what you want. Fulfillment is living what you're made for. You know, and it's like fulfillment and success, they're not even in the same universe. And there's nothing wrong with going for success, but you really got to figure out what you're made for, and nobody knows in the beginning. So you start where you are and you do what's in front of you, do what's next, and you keep growing until you start to discover, hey, this is my real passion, this is my real hunger and drive, and it can change. People go for 5, 6, 7 years, and then they usually question their business, their career, their body, their relationships. And then one of two things happens. They change direction and feel renewed, or they go, no, I got a great deal here, what the hell's wrong with me? And they recommit and they get stronger. But that's life. And if you don't grow, I don't give a damn how much you got going for you, you're going to be miserable. What you have to look at today is, number one, you got to invest in yourself, just like we talked about earlier. You got to make you more skilled and more powerful and more effective so that you can command more going forward economically. So whether there's inflation or not, it doesn't affect you. And because there's going to be inflation for probably a period of time here. We're going to see a tough environment. The second thing is to keep feeding your mind and your emotions so that you don't freak out like everybody else. Then the third thing is you do have to get in the game. You know, it's like the first thing you should do is stop being a consumer and become an owner. I mean, you and I both know that's not what most people are. If you own an Apple phone and you don't own Apple, that's a giant mistake. I'm not saying that Apple this price or that price. It's just over time, if you're a consumer, you lose. Where focus goes, energy flows.
100%.
Most people are focused on what they're afraid of, and so more fear comes their way. And it's easy because we all have a 2 million-year-old brain that's designed to look for what's wrong, to protect, so we protect ourselves, to fight it, or to run for it, or to freeze, right? That's the way our old brain is wired. It's a 2 million-year-old brain. But that brain's never gonna make you happy. You have to learn to take control of your focus. And if you focus on, oh my God, it's never gonna work, or you listen to somebody who tells you, oh, COVID's gonna be here forever, and we're never gonna have any freedom again, and you focus on that, you can get really depressed, as most people have. We've had 100,000 people overdose on drugs. We have more depression and more people in a suicidal mode than we've ever seen in the last 2 years, because people need a compelling future. You can deal with a tough today if you got a compelling tomorrow. And so what I help people do is design that. But once you change your focus, you'll change how you feel. Focus and feeling go together. My original teacher was Jim Rohn when I met him when I was 17. And I wanted to know why all my fathers were broke, because they were good men. You know, I loved all four of my fathers. And I remember him saying, Tony, we're all equal as souls, but we're not equal in the marketplace. I was like, what does that mean? And he said, well, think about it. He goes, you need to become more valuable if you want to have economic freedom. He said, you have to work on yourself more than anything else, and you have to work on it in a way where there's something you can do for others better than anyone else, or at least more, at a better quality. And he gave me an example of like working at McDonald's, and he said, you know, if you work at McDonald's, you know, you make whatever it was in those days, $5 an hour, whatever it was. And he said, you know, I go, yeah, but that seems so unfair. And he goes, yeah, and teachers, I gave the example of teachers, and there's these billionaires, you know, that make $1 billion in a year, hedge fund guy, you know. And he said, Tony, the guy you just mentioned, he provided a 40% return last year, and that went to nonprofits, everything else. He said, that means those organizations double their money almost every 2 years. He is adding massive value, hundreds of $1 billion, so they made $1 billion. He goes, this person is doing a job that anyone can learn in 20 minutes or half a day. So it's a beginning job. He said, you got to think of it as one thing. It's all about adding value. How can you do more for others than anybody else in the world? And that stuck with me. I mean, I was just like, I decided I wanted to do more for others than anybody in the world. In order to do that, I had to have certain skills, and I went after those skills, and I still do. Like, it's a never-ending thing. If you think you're a master, you're full of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's probably some of the best advice I've received, at least on life and business and direction, and it affected my mission. Start thinking the problem's permanent. No problem is permanent. Or you start thinking the problem's pervasive. Because I haven't handled my finances, my whole world's over. Or because my relationship's bad, my whole world's over. Your life is bigger than that. Or all this is happening because there's something wrong with me. When you get to that point, you stop trying. And so my goal right now is to shake that up for people. People need a new perspective, and you can't do it by just sitting and thinking. You got to move your body. You got to change your energy and your focus, because low level of energy, I don't think how smart you are, you're not going to use all your ability. But if I get you into a higher state of being, mentally, emotionally, physically, and all of a sudden you start remembering who you are, and you start coming up with answers that you never even thought were possible before. I think the most important habit to start with is having something that you care about more than yourself. A mission. It could be your family, it could be photography, it could be your business, it could be, you know, something you want to do in your community, it could be humanity. But I don't mean virtue signaling. I mean, you know what you're really driven by. And when people have something that they care about more than themselves, they don't run out of energy, they don't run out of excitement, because, you know, if it's just about you, it's easy to get comfortable. And comfort makes you not grow. You know, people ask me all the time, Tony, you meet millions of people, what's the secret to happiness? And I always laugh and say, it's pretty simple. It's one word: progress. Progress equals happiness. Because if you're not making progress, you're not growing. And there's only a few rules in the universe. They're not mine, they're the universe. Everything grows or dies. And everything contributes beyond itself, or it's eventually eliminated by evolution. And so, for me, growing and giving is the game. And so you got to find something that makes you want to keep growing and giving so you don't get comfortable. You can't sit at the table of success too long or you get fat and bored, right? So we need to feel alive. A lot of people achieve a goal and then their brain goes, is this all there is? Or even if you achieved a goal you loved, it's like you loved it. How long did you stay excited about whatever you succeeded at? You may have worked on it for years. Did you stay excited for a year? Almost never. 9 months, 6 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours, because you're not supposed to stay just satisfied, because our nature is to grow, and when we grow, we have something to give. So to me, that's the core. And so the bottom line is you need to be good at pattern recognition, and that's what gets somebody strong at anything. I mean, you look at, why is Amazon doing so well? He realized one pattern was valued over anything else: convenience. Right? If you look at Tom Brady, a friend of mine, he's got pattern recognition like nobody else at 43 years old. He's able to do things no one dreamed could be done. He's got more Super Bowl rings than any team. So I said, I want to go to the best people on earth and see what do they see that none of us see. What's the pattern? Then you got to learn pattern utilization. It's one thing to see it, it's another thing to use it. And then if you're good after a while, you get to pattern creation. It's like if you learn to play the piano, most people play other people's music. And then there's a point you've learned so much that you're able to create. And I think those 3 skills are the most important skills. So I look at the areas that matter most and say, who already has that extraordinary pattern recognition utilization? So I go to Ray Dalio, who's, returned more money to investors than anyone alive. He's going to have a different level of understanding than the average person.